introduce our keynote this morning, Shawn Rogers. Shawn is Vice President of Research for Business Intelligence, Data Warehousing, and Analytics at Enterprise Management Associates. Hello. Prior to joining EMA, Shawn co-founded the BI Network, a global online publication covering business intelligence and data warehousing. He was also a partner at DM Review, which is now Information Management, and has held various executive level positions with technology companies. And Shawn is also an internationally recognized speaker and author with over 20 years of hands-on IT experience, and is a longtime TDWI faculty member where he teaches classes on big data and social data analytics. So, Shawn?
Good morning. It's great to be here. I'm going to start out a little bit like Paul just did, because I think it's always good to kind of gauge the room. How many of you are here because you're presently challenged by business users of BI kind of driving initiatives and pushing perhaps on the territory that IT is, or data management professionals have often kind of managed? How many of you are here because there was warm eggs? So I'm going to be a little irreverent today. Actually, I was instructed to be by Paul, so we also made sure no one got any tomatoes. I did see small watermelon bits. I don't want to see any of them in my direction today. But I do know that the makeup of the room are data professionals in general. There's some business folks here as well. TDWI usually gets a bit from both sides of the fence. But there is a change underway, and it's definitely one that you can't hide from. My first slide today is a little silly, but I see in my line of work many businesses kind of going this route. They're kind of ignoring the change that's happening. They're ignoring the fact that there's somewhat of a paradigm shift, and more often than not, the paradigm shifts that we've all encountered over the last years of our career have always been technology-based, right? It's the newest data quality, best practices, or the fastest analytic engine, or the this or the that. And those things have always changed the way that we do our business. But right now there's a culture shift underway that's kind of running parallel to the technology, which was sort of the genesis of today's conversation. We have culture change, we have technology shift, and at the core of it is where the IT and data professionals are losing hold on what they have had for a very long period of time, which is a monopolistic supplier relationship with their customers. IT and data management professionals chose the when, the where, the how. They controlled the budget. They did most of the work around vendor selection, feature selection. They did the testing, they built the test environments, they helped size the POCs, they were part of every inch of the track. And what they started finding recently was there was a shift because the business wanted to do things differently. And those differences are things I think you're all hearing about. They want their data real time, they want to self-explore, they want to bring in technology that you didn't bring in. And they are willing to challenge you for this terrain. And perhaps even more importantly, as this has gone on, the business has started to control more of the budget. And that's really a big shift and change. So, and the last bit is I will touch a little bit more on the infrastructure in a minute, but let's face it, if we had all convened in this room 10, 12 years ago, we would only talk about the highly successful, rather expensive, difficult to maintain and deliver enterprise data warehouse. And it was a great foundational tool for us. But the enterprise data warehouse continues to be a critical piece or component of our world. But at the same time, companies like yours, and I'm sure many of you in the audience today have introduced new purpose-built platforms to affect change within your ecosystem around data management. So today my goal is maybe to challenge you to think just a little bit about this impending change. Think about the fact that IT is losing its grip on their monopoly of choice, and that things for successful IT and data management professionals, you are going to have to start shifting the way you do business a little bit. And like I said, as we go through this today, I'll look forward to, at least judging from your faces, if I'm hitting the mark. The change is definitely underway, and as I said, For me, the change goes back to two things. It's cultural, it's technical, and the cultural parts that really are making sense are coming from a couple major groups. The first one is maturing users. When I got into this business, the first time I got my hands anywhere near a BI tool, I called Rob Ash at Keynote up in Canada, and I asked Mr. Ash if he'd be kind enough to send me a copy of PowerPlay and Impromptu because we had some work we needed to do at DM Review Magazine. And because we were a media company in the space, he felt that that was okay to do, and he gave us a copy of it. And I was the one and only person in my business that knew how to run BI. I liked that. It was a cool model. I had the data, I had the tools, I selected the tools. If you wanted data, you had to come take me to lunch. And slowly but surely, as I became more busy with my work, I started a list of what Paul wanted, and what Dave wanted, and what Rich wanted, and what Don wanted, and I prioritized them by where they took me to lunch. And that's how I decided how I was going to dole out the business information that these people were requesting. And I'm the first to agree that that probably wasn't the best model, but I think all of us have seen similar models in our enterprise in one way or another. Maybe not as lunch-centric as mine might have been, but certainly in the area of having to get in line, having to be in the queue. And that was when there was only a handful of power users. So you'd go down, you'd get in line in Bob's office, Bob would say, yes, I'll do my best to get you what you need, and you'd have to wait a week or a month. Certainly not very agile, certainly not very flexible, and certainly not very running at the speed of business. So these users have become a lot more demanding. They want to run workloads that they've never run before, and stuff that we never thought they would dream of running before. Really sophisticated, interesting things. There's this democratization shift that's happening all around you, and I'm sure many of you who are in these positions in the data management or IT side are fielding more and more requests. Hey, I need to get on this system. I want access to that data. How do I get to be part of this project? I heard you guys have big data. I want to go and touch Hadoop. Right? It happens every day. And the thing is what's changed is that the white lab coach used to lead us through the process. Now everyone wants to lead through the process. So you can't stop this shift of maturing end users and people who want to do things differently. The technology has definitely evolved. There are all brand new technologies in the market. We're leveraging in-memory in ways we've never done before. We're managing the memory space in an incredibly cool way that allows us to do workloads that just weren't practical before. You know, we've got new disk, the solid state disks with the much faster IOs, and we're starting to see how some companies are integrating that or mixing it in a hybrid. We're leveraging MPP technology at a level that we've never done before. All of these things are enabling this shift of power and this shift of change. The last two, and the one at the top of the sheet right now, I think is one of the most important, which is the economic aspect. Some of this stuff we could do before. How many of you know that big data has been around for 15, 20 years? We used to call it very large database technologies. My friend Richard Winter, who might be here today, has written some of the best articles and insight on the subject. The trouble was, in order to do big data a handful of years ago, I needed a room full of Cray supercomputers. I needed a federal grant, and I needed a week for a query to run. It didn't solve the problems, but it was work we were capable of doing. What's happened now is, from an economic standpoint, we have open source software, open source frameworks that are enabling us to do the things that we couldn't do in the past at an economic level that we could do now that makes much better sense. So the great news is that more of us here in the room can embrace the direction of some of these new technologies. The other bit is valuable data. I can't tell you how many articles I've read or written over the years where I've had to discuss, hey, you know, there's this 20% of the data that we're using, and it's very well organized, it's structured, we can get it into the system and hit it with SQL and everything's gonna be great. And someone during the meeting will say, well, what about all that other data? You know, that's unstructured, and it's email, and it's field reports and customer service stuff. It would be nice, but we just don't have the technology or the money for that. And that's changed as well. So now we're able to do work in a way that we couldn't, at an economic level that we couldn't before. We're able to do this work with data that's even more interesting, and we're doing it with people who are unafraid and are willing to march through this process of change to help get to where they want to go. So it kind of brings me to the user groups in general. The community is growing, and as I said up front, it used to be we handed BI to a handful of smart people, and that's where you went. That was the well you went to get the water. Nowadays, this sort of community of users is growing beyond, I think, anything many of us really thought it would. Business analysts, external users, BI analysts, developers play a very big role in our environments today. And now, at the end of this, there's two new people that we've definitely added to the ecosystem. There's the data scientists. Do I have any data scientists in the room? You should identify them. They make lots of money. They'll buy lunch. Data scientists are under great demand. They're hard to find. I think we only got 2 or 3 hands in the entire room on a data scientist. But a very unique set of user capabilities, unique demands on your system. And the final one on this sheet is the folks that we're kind of talking about today. These line of business folks are traditional customers, are traditional consumers of the end product of what we've done when we brought data warehousing and BI to bear on business problems. But these guys have changed too. They're no longer as simple to understand as they were before. They're more demanding, they're less fearful, they want to drive. It's like my 15-year-old son. I get up in the morning, I'm having Fruit Loops for breakfast, and Jack walks in and goes, "Dad, do you need to go anywhere? Dad, do you need to go anywhere? Would you like to go somewhere?" That's what these users are like. It's like, hey, where's the BI tool? Let me drive. I want to be in charge. And then when you look at these fine folks, you can take these business users and apply them to where they fit in today's ecosystem. So if I showed you a slide about data warehousing and business intelligence ecosystems a couple of years ago, probably would have had a data warehouse in the center, maybe a data mart, maybe an analytic appliance. It's become a lot more organized. What you see here is a diagram that my company and my research partners and I work on called the hybrid data ecosystem. Hybrid data ecosystems is simply a label that just says data ecosystems today are not centralized around the data warehouse. Data warehouse is a critical component of a data warehouse strategy, but it is not the end-all of end-alls. It is probably not the only tool that you know or need. How many, if I could just see some hands this morning, how many of you have introduced an analytic appliance into your environment? How many of you are playing with cloud? Okay, cool. These are some of the new purpose-built platforms that are finding their way into the ecosystem. For those of you who studied Bill Inman, or if you studied Ralph Kimball's way of doing data warehouses, both gentlemen are friends of mine, and I've done business with Bill for many years. Even Bill Inman understands that the data warehouse isn't the center of the universe anymore. It's a critical component of a more hybrid approach. So now you have new users, new demands, new economic models, new data, and a much wider, disparate, diverse ecosystem of purpose-built platforms where companies are focusing on putting the right data in the right platform for the right outcome. Your job is getting a lot harder. And that was the reason for the title today, is are you ready for this and are you thinking about it? And I'm hopefully going to drag you through a few of these topics today and shed a little light on it. I'm going to begin with this. I mentioned that a lot more users, a lot different users are in the marketplace today, and I kind of focused on those business users at the end, the data scientists, the business user folks. What we find is when we interview the end user community and we talk to who wants access to information or who's running different areas or projects, we see a dress code issue. There are suits and there are hoodies, don't mind. There is a whole new breed of data worker in your environment, and they come with a completely different set of expectations as composed or as compared to their more traditional friends. If you look at the folks that are in the suits, legacy system compliant, and what I meant by that was is they know the environment, they know what they can get their hands on, they've been working with the IT and data management folks for a while, they know how it works. They're compliant to the system. They're desktop oriented. They sit in their office, they pull down dashboards, they run some reports, they get push reports delivered to them, and that's how they are running their show. And they tend to be more passive. And I'm not saying they don't ask you for things or put work upon you, but they're not as rule-breaking as you might get from other groups. They're not as pushing the envelope as other groups. And they're making a lot of their decisions in really small groups or silos. Not all the time, I'm just speaking generically. You look over at this Hoodie group, this new Google generation of knowledge workers, these kids that are coming into our workplaces right now who have expectations to work with data the same way they work in the social world, and they want to, they demand that it comes to them mobile and that it's agile and that the data can be used and twisted in multiple ways and that they can drill in and drill out and be interactive or iterative with the data. They expect to be able to mash one data source with another. Anybody in here that is in charge of running an ETL job knows that there's work to be done when we want to bring two data sources together. These hoodie-wearing business folks don't want to have the time for that. They want to federate on out. They want to jump out to the data source and hit the data source directly and hit it along with this one so that they get instant gratification, instant business insight. And in the end, once they've done all that, they want to chat with their friends about it, decide where to go for the best coffee, get on Yelp to decide where I'm going to go to the best restaurant, and in the very same theme of things, they want to collaborate, discuss, debate how they're going to make their business decision. It's two very different business users applying pressure to our lives today. And I thought it was worth just kind of mentioning because I think it definitely makes a bit of a change in how we see things. I've used this slide in one of my classes before, and if any of you have ever read Nick Carr's books, he wrote that book that I know all of you love, Does IT Matter? But it caused quite a ruckus in the industry when it came out. But Nick was sort of onto something, and he wrote another book called The Big Switch, which was specific, and he talks about Edison and Google. He makes a really good point. I think that this is also at the heart of what we see this disruptive force in our ecosystems being. Back in the day, if I wanted to manufacture chairs, and I was going to build a chair manufacturing facility, the very first thing I needed to get my hands on was not wood, it wasn't fabric, it wasn't even good employees or craftsmen. The first thing I needed to get my hands on was water. Because that's where the water paddle wheel would go, that would generate the belts, that would move my machines and tools. If you remember, all those old buildings had those looping belt systems that would drive the drill, would drive the saw. So what really happened when I did that? So here I am, I'm a chair manufacturer. The very first decision I made was IT related. I started an IT side of my business, a technology side of my business, before I could actually make my very first chair. But over time, Edison and the other smart guys in the world got together and they started figuring out how to deliver electricity in a smarter way, how to make it more of a utility. And as it became more of a utility, it was no longer that important for me as an entrepreneurial manufacturer to decide that I needed to put my factory next to a water wheel. So things evolved, things got disruptive, and it got commoditized, or in this case, utilitized. And we see an awful lot of that happening in the IT and the data management and BI space right now, especially around certain technologies like cloud, that are basically making these types of technological advances something almost as easy as plugging your data into a wall and getting all of the functionality and features that you might expect. And folks, this is going to be disruptive and continue to be more disruptive to anybody that's here today in the IT or the data professional space. And we're going to talk about it. I have a little reference there to as IT jumped the shark. For those of you who don't know the reference, it actually goes back to Happy Days show that was on years and years ago, and they ran out of things to write about. They just couldn't find any more storylines, so they had the Fonz jump over a pool of sharks, and they decided that, yeah, that was it. They had jumped the shark. In many respects, IT is struggling with that same thing. the old way of doing things is putting many IT departments and offices within enterprise companies at a spot where some of the executive teams are starting to look like maybe they're the guys who are jumping the shark. It causes contention when you have these two things come together. So I just want to talk about a few things that I see that IT wants and demands. I know it's smart to have security, it's smart to have governance and compliance, it's extremely smart to be able to audit and maintain stability of your systems. Proven processes need to be in place. These processes should be tested and vetted to make sure that they, from X to Y to Z, what's supposed to happen happens. And you want good quality data, good information, you want to manage that data, and ultimately you would like to be in control. And it doesn't make IT a bad thing, it doesn't make data management professionals a bad thing. What it makes is for contention, because your friends across the aisle, on the business side of the world, well, they want access to data now. They want access to new data. They are not especially fond of data quality. If I could ask folks that do a little bit of digging around in data that are in the room today, how many of you feel that the last analytic that you ran was absolutely 100% perfect to the penny, or perfect to the pound, or perfect to whatever measurement? How many of you are operating your business on good enough analytics? A good, decent view of the data, there's a little wiggle room at the end, but overall you're getting a fairly good shot. Every time I ask this question, I get more on that side than the other. We've spent years trying to fine-tune the data warehouse to be perfect. And I'm here to tell you that the new users today aren't as interested in perfect. Now, I understand in the financial world, the insurance world, some other places, some of that data does have to be handled and managed to deliver perfect. But more often than not, and more popular these last couple of years, is a need for the business to just get their hands on good data that's good enough that I can get an insight as to what I'm trying to do. The other things that they want is agility. We all know that making change to some of these structured data environments is costly and time-consuming. It's very common. Philip Russell, who is one of the research directors here at TDWI, constantly writes articles about the lack of agility within data warehouses and within other data structures, and the fact that the biggest time sink is that area of transforming the data, treating the data, deciding what to do with the data, finally loading the data, putting it in the data, and so on and so forth. And then 2 weeks later, they publish the report, and some guy like me goes, well, that was pretty cool, but I'd sure like to add the Western region numbers to this. Okay, Shawn, we'll get back to you in 6 weeks. Because that's how long it takes. So the new business folks want agility at a different level than we've been able to deliver before. They want iterative work environments. That means they want to drill in, drill down. They don't want to just be stopped. They don't want to ask a single question. They want to ask multiple questions. Frankly, they want the freedom to roam. And when you look at these two sets of requirements and needs and wants from these two groups, I picked boxing gloves on purpose. One of the guys I work with, John Meyer, said to me the other day, he says, the interesting thing about this boxing match between IT and BusinessDriven BI is that the fight's not fair anymore. Because honestly, if the business gets sick of fighting, they don't stick it out to the 10th round to see who gets knocked down. They just take their boxing gloves and go somewhere else. Because the go somewhere else option is kind of new and interesting as well. The business is going after technologies that address those issues. They're going to cloud technology, they're going to self-service and open source technology. They are doing different things with big data workloads. They're doing social data analysis, even though it's hard to get into traditional environments. And they're out there collaborating. And instead of finishing the fight, finishing the contention with the people that they're working with, they just took the fight somewhere else and they went to a different place to have it, and they're not fighting anymore because they got what they want. So when you look at those two slides, IT finds itself in a spot where some of the power, that monopolistic power from up front, is most definitely slipping away. And we see this in research at companies like EMA, where I work, where we recently saw that in big data projects, 600 and some big data projects, IT's share of those projects from a sponsorship role, they paid for it, dropped to just 18%. The next three groups behind IT for big data projects were sales, marketing, and finance. And that's where the budget came from. Those three groups spent money to drive initiatives in their business. And you can bet when they spent the money, they did not hand the keys over to the monopoly board and say, hey fellas, let us know how it works out. They had a vested interest in what they wanted and what they were going to get for the investment that they were making. And so this shift away from IT budgets and data management professional budgets on over to something closer like a line of business running these projects is very important. Cloud is one of them. I like cloud. I teach a cloud class for Paul here at TDWI. It opens all kinds of doors. And every major vendor, almost every major vendor that you will encounter on the floor here this week has a cloud offer. Ask them. It's interesting. A lot of them are different. They're all taking different approaches to it. But at the core of it, what they're trying to solve with their cloud solutions is helping you avoid CapEx, so that you don't have to shell out all the money at once. They're helping you with quicker, perhaps faster implementation times. And the great part is that they're meeting you with a set of features that now equals desktop. A few years ago when I started covering cloud, I had to stand up here and go, hey, cloud's kind of 80-20. You're going to get about 80% of what you need. If you want those other 20% of really cool things, maybe you should stick with Cognos on the desktop. But now, it's maturity, and the folks that are doing cloud are delivering feature sets and the capabilities that just about anybody would be demanding. Their price points tend to be lower, so it's once again meeting some of those needs I talked about up front, where smaller companies can adopt the technology and where they can do more innovative things with it. It also opens up the door for credit card powered projects. And I think if you are in the management side of IT or business, data management, this one has to scare you. Because your executive can go out with an Amex card and engage a highly flexible, extremely strong provider in the cloud and get done what they want to get done. We're finding more and more shadow IT projects are heading to the cloud. And from that point, they're blossoming and they're going viral within their companies. They're getting the attention of people because they brought them online faster. Inevitably, someone during the process says, how'd you guys pay for that? I didn't see a $2 million rec go by for new servers, and that's the point. You don't have to buy it, you rent it. So take a look when you're on the expo floor this week. Lots of people out there disrupting your world with cloud. For you IT, data professionals in general, you've got some opportunities here. The first one is I would start now training and investing in your teams to better work with third-party vendors. The trouble with our traditional way of doing things is it was very inside-looking. We had our team of professionals, we all worked together, different people had different skill sets, and we got the job done. Now suddenly you have an outlier. You have a company that's not even in the state that your business is in, and they have critical data and critical analytic functionality. They have critical workloads that are a highly important part of your business, and you may not have the tools you need or want to communicate with them. Some of these open cloud solutions only have 1-800 numbers. It's going to be incumbent upon you to develop a strategy, not to be the monopolistic decider of which cloud we're going to go to or which tools we're going to use, but the foundational things that are important for long-term success. Portability in the cloud is becoming very important. We see a lot of open source stuff happening in the cloud where we can build an architecture that's cloud supported. And if we decide that we don't want to use provider A because they start getting expensive, we can actually forklift our entire world over to another provider in a pretty seamless manner. So those are some of the things. If I were an IT professional or data management professional, I'd be looking for a way to add portability to the process. And I'd also be looking for a way to tether this thing back to the mothership, especially around security and governance, which is one of the big things that we're concerned about. So the point I'm trying to make with cloud is I don't think you can stop it. It's credit card enabled. They're going to go do it. What you need to do is take a look at how you can build better teams to manage it and to work with the cloud providers. I suggest that you take a good look at how to design for portability across your infrastructure so that you have the ability to make change down the road and creating some connections to what's critical for your company. This one's one of my favorites. I think this was one of the first big disruptors in our space. Self-service or customer-driven or user-driven data visualization, data and business intelligence. It's that pretty stuff that comes from all of the data. And it really has disrupted things. It's put the power of insight in the hands of many. It's less expensive, it was easy to deploy, and I look at the size of some of the leaders in this market, and the size of their deployments are getting into the 10s, the 20s, the 30,000 people running around with licenses to these programs. It is the ultimate disruptor. It is the thing that got the attention of the BI space, and I think it is part of the fuel that is driving business-driven business intelligence, because they have a car they can drive on their own. It's not such a fancy sports car that you need a special degree and go to a driving school for. You can get most of what you want from this type of solution. And that's exactly what they're after. They want iterative work. They want data mashups. They want to be able to bring A, B, and C in, take a look at it, make a business decision, and move on. They want to do it on their own, and they don't want to wait in line to do it. Your opportunity, if you're on that side of data management and IT professionals, is to create, and this is my recommendation, create the playground. Let them have that playground. Let them enjoy the freedom that they have. But put the fence far enough into the distance where they don't feel like they're corralled in. And that fence I'm talking about is security and governance and auditability. Look for the solution providers in the market that have the ability to take these self-service solutions and migrate the work back into ownership and operationalize it if it becomes really popular. If you've got some West Coast guy who's doing an excellent job day in and day out, giving insight and sharing it on a platform, well, approach that user and operationalize that work to get it to be even more streamlined and to be more governed and a little bit more defined within your environment. Create agile data access. I'm a fan of where data virtualization lies in the market today. TDWI has classes on this topic. If you're interested, you should go check them out. One of them's sometimes taught by Dave Wells or my partner, John Myers, occasionally. And data virtualization technology is doing a great job of letting you as professionals manage all of the data points within this very diverse ecosystem and still make it kind of a service, make it easy for people to get to the information that you're curating. So once again, I, as a wandering, self-directed business intelligence person, I don't feel like you're hindering my success, and you've put the boundaries far enough on the playground where I'm just not overly concerned about it. Last but not least with this, you gotta just embrace it. I know that many companies in the room have made large investments to traditional BI platforms, only to have them somewhat supplanted or get the water muddy by the addition of some of these self-service tools. They're not going to go away. They're a different tool for a different user, and it's time to start looking at how to empower that user, because frankly, they outpower the suits. They outpower the other folks that are in that list that I discussed earlier. So my urge there is to function along that line. Open source, one of my favorite topics. I used to teach on open source quite a bit. Wow, what a disruptor. Open source has always been a little scary for anybody that runs an IT or data management shop, because you don't know where the code's coming, you don't understand how often it's going to get updated. There's a bit of concern about liability. There's a bit of concern about a lot of things that are going on when you bring this in. The problem is they've got 10,000 coders and they're updating it every 6 minutes, and it just keeps getting better. And Bob has it under his desk in the server, and I don't know the password. And that's where cloud found its way, where open source found its way in. Open source, more often than not, comes in at a departmental level in a shadow IT project underneath someone's desk, because they couldn't get the flexibility, they couldn't get the agility, they couldn't get the budgets or the attention of IT to get done what they needed to get done now that was critical for their business. So in a way, you can characterize these new business people as impatient, petulant children, if you would like. But on the other side, as I mentioned, they're controlling the budgets and they're setting the direction. I think open source creates an awful lot of opportunity for innovation. I think for the business, they like it because it's free. How many of anybody here knows that Hadoop is free? You can download it from the Apache site. How many here really think it's free? I have a friend of mine at IBM once that said, Hadoop is free like a puppy. It's cute when you bring it home, but it starts making a mess. And all of a sudden there's 4 of you taking care of it, and you're having conversations about pig and scoop and Mahat, and you don't know what to do with the MPP and the map R this, and what's Java, and does anybody do Java, and how are we going to talk to this beast? And I thought this was just going to solve the world, because our CEO, he read that article on Forbes while he was on the plane, and he said, this is the answer to everything, plus it's free. I teach my big data class on Wednesday. I always ask the class, how many of you are here because your CEO told you to go get a Hadoop? They don't care what color your Hadoop is, they don't care how big it is, they just want to tell the board of directors, well, yeah, we're on it, we've got a Hadoop. It's not free, but it does have a lot of great advantages for innovation. It can cycle change in a way that's really interesting. Your business users like it because it's download and go. They like it that they can slap it on some commodity hardware. I have geeky friends sitting in the back of this room today. I just saw one of them walk by. I know for a fact he's running a Hadoop cluster on his laptop right now. So it is easy to get to. And as I said, often used as a cornerstone for shadow IT projects. My advice to you, if you're in the management and IT role, is don't fight it. It's happening. Find ways to embrace it. You're going to get executive mandates that are going to want you to investigate some of these things like Hadoop and others. Look for how you can do it in a smart way. And there is quite a bit of maturity happening around the industry right now, where I see a lot of the vendors are spending time kind of coalescing, bringing together all these bits and pieces and funny named products in the Hadoop stack and other open source stacks to help make them more manageable, trackable, and dealt with through governance. Big data. Anybody here heard of big data? I think Paul and I were joking that the easiest way to get someone to come to a class now is to put the word big data in front of them. It's pretty accurate. It's working for one of my classes, so I'll see you all in my big data class later on Wednesday. I have never in my life seen a more disruptive technology in this industry. I started in this industry in the 90s. I've seen a lot come and go. I've never seen anything like big data. Big data enables us to do the work that we used to wish that we could do, but we couldn't because it was impractical. That's my definition. I don't prescribe to the 3 V's. As a matter of fact, if you come to my class this week, I have a great slide with the 10 V's. I'll explain them all to you. It's not that simple. It is, what can we do with this technology, this data, and this opportunity that we could not do before in a practical manner? And that's at the core of it. It is highly disruptive. It's allowing us to do killer workloads. My research partner, John Myers, and I just completed a very in-depth program of 600 in-flight big data projects, all in action. One of the questions we asked him was, who's paying for it? The answer was sales, finance, marketing, the budgets, right? Then we said, well, what are you going to do with it? And it wasn't simple stuff. It was risk management and liquidity risk analysis, and CRM, better helping and servicing customers, and they wanted to integrate social with it. They had all kinds of very sophisticated ways of looking at this particular type of technology, and they wanted to use it to be different, to differentiate between their competitors. So you're going to see a lot of steam behind this. There's a couple of things I'll urge you as IT professionals, data management professionals to consider. Is either you can try to keep it out, or you can embrace it. And if you embrace it, help not make it an island unto itself. I see a lot of installations right now where it's like, here's our enterprise stuff, and that's our big data. They're not really connected. Because we don't know if we want all that sullied information in our pristine data warehouse environment and so on. My point would be is that you want to avoid that. What's going to happen, and I'm going to use a phrase a friend of mine gave me, is you will create cylinders of excellence, otherwise known as silos. And the more silos you have in your environment, the more likely you are not to be able to get information to and from them, and you'll miss that opportunity to hit really big on the value opportunity. The other thing that you can do is remove the complexity, help fill that gap around the skills. There's a lot of programs, a lot of solutions in the market right now that are doing a great job of enabling companies to use these new technologies, and doing so in a way that sort of abstracts the complexity away. And I think that that's an opportunity for data management professionals as well. Social media, this one's near and dear to my heart. I teach social data analytics here on Wednesday, so it's probably too late to get into that class, but if it's not, come join us. The rap I get on social data is it's fuzzy data. Who cares? Shawn sat on the couch, ate Cheetos, drank a Miller, and watched the Packers. Tell you who cares. Frito-Lay, the NFL, Lazy Boy, and my wife Dawn, who wishes I wasn't laying on the sofa. But the point is, all of that information can find its way into a system that can be used by sales, by service, and so on. And it runs at a velocity that's just unbelievable. If you've got business-driven people who want to leverage social data, don't spend any time trying to tell them how it's frivolous information. Get out there and help them and design and leverage ways to use that information. The information comes in different ways. There's sentiment data, there's geolocation data, there's information on behavioral. How many of you have gone from the ESPN website to a cooking site, and then when you land there, all the ads are from our industry? Behavioral ad targeting. You know, they'd follow you everywhere you go. Graph analysis, understanding the importance of who I know and who they know. Did you know that there are insurance companies in the United States today that are using graph analysis, my social graph, to determine my likely risk for insurance fraud? They are using the publicly available information at LinkedIn to determine whether or not you're a blue-collar or white-collar worker. And if you're a white-collar worker and you have a certain number of vice presidential and CEO friends, you're less likely to commit insurance fraud than someone who might not have that in their social circle. So they're grading the social graph using social information to determine what type of policy to write for you. It's almost spooky. It's interesting. Delivering embedded insights, I think, for everybody here is probably the easiest track to getting where you need to be. You can get this information into existing apps to add flavor. How many of you would like to call the call center at United or Continental or any other airline for that matter, and have them answer the phone with, "Good afternoon, Mr. Rogers. I see you're at O'Hare Airport. I see you're angry. I'm sorry about the snow in Denver today." Wouldn't that be much nicer than that sort of stereotypical? And it's as easy as putting my last 5 tweets in a console for a customer service rep at an airline. Wouldn't it be nice to check into a hotel and have them say, hey, I noticed that you were talking socially this week about maybe wanting to go see the Bears game. Our concierge has tickets if you're interested. Now, I know at this point, some of you are going, that's a little creepy. And that's cool. That's what makes this interesting. I think it's kind of fun. Many of you in the room think it's creepy. If you come to my social class this week, go, what are you really creepy about? But for the point is if you're an IT professional or a data management professional and your life's being disrupted by this type of information, you need to figure out how to manage it. You need to leverage the data types and help them get the added value that they're looking for. My last bit is collaboration. Like I said, the hoodies and the suits are different. Today's knowledge workers want very badly to collaborate. They want to make decisions as a group. They can't go to a restaurant without making a decision as a group. They're certainly not going to decide how to change the price of something without doing it as a group. Now, the other thing is when the systems are put in place, these group environments help track that decision. They monitor it, they audit it, so that when I leave the company, someone can come back 2 years later and go, you know, Paul Kautza and Shawn Rogers solved this problem in the Western Sale. And let me see if I can, here it is. Here's their conversation. Here's the notes. And then here's where Paul explained to Shawn that he can't do math. And here's where Shawn agreed, and we changed the price to this. And this is how they got to it. The problem is problem solving within the enterprise is getting very complex and we're not keeping track of it. Collaboration allows us to do that. Now, I'm not talking about putting a star next to my favorite report or annotating my favorite report. I'm talking about real, live, interactive collaboration between departments, between areas, and then sharing that information on an enterprise platform. I've done research in this area with some partners, and in the past, what we found is that the business very much wants to do this, but they will not do it if IT chooses the platform for them. They want and need to have a voice in their own collaboration. So a good word of advice is if your company is looking at collaboration, make sure the business is involved or they won't adopt it. So, I really love IT and data management. And for the longest time, you have been the super technology heroes of our world. And I think that it needs to continue that way. And I hope that, as I've talked about each of the disruptors today, I hope you've heard a little tongue-in-cheek, because I have a lot of respect for everybody that's in this room that's smarter than me from a technological standpoint. And I think that there's a great way for you to continue to own, operate, and monopolize part of your business. It's just not going to be the same part that you've been monopolizing. Some of this will bring to them. Look for opportunities to create agile data governance structures to promote and enable all the crazy stuff these business people want to do. Empower those new users. Help them get what they want. Don't fight them with policy. Find the policy that needs to be changed, logically adjust it, and get them the information that they need. Lead them, educate them, and become the resource within the enterprise that is not the guy you have to take to lunch to get what you want done, but be the guy that will knock down that wall to get this business user this unique thing that they're after. Design agile environments, design environments that are very portable, because let's face it, now one of you in this room has delivered a report to anybody who's ever said thanks, I don't need to change that ever again. Most of you have delivered that report and not gotten out the door when they run. Could we add red? Right? And then you're still not done. So the agility aspect is important. Move the fence, especially for the self-service guys. I think the fence is important. I think some of the wild, wild west silliness that's come from discovery and self-service products is a little scary. I mean, you got guys just running out there doing analysis on anything they get their hands on. And there's no regulation or governance around it. We don't know where the spreadsheet came from. I can tell you, in my role as an analyst, I've met a lot of vendors recently that are addressing this. So you should do your due diligence and find the folks that put a fence out there and keep it out of view. It's just like it was when we were in fifth year of recess. You know, you knew there was a fence. It was so far away you didn't care. You still had a good time. That's the logic for self-service and discovery, guys. Focus on the budgets. And by this, I don't mean yours. I mean where the budgets are. Become savvy in your environment. The money is moving away from IT and it's getting into the line of businesses. You need to find a line of business in your world that has the capacity to spend and support the things you want to do. You're going to need to partner with these people in a way that you haven't in the past. And my last little piece of advice today, other than wanting you to have a great time this week at TDWI, is remember, enable or lose. The bigger restrictor you become to this new push, those four forces I talked about up front, smart users, new technology, new economic models, new data. That's an avalanche. It's a tsunami of effect and cultural change that you can't do anything about. Couple that with a larger span of users, ranging from our old good friends, the analysts, the DBAs, all the way on up to business and data scientists. And then you get even more confusing when you look at, well, what kind of business user do I have? Is it a suit? Is it a hoodie? What do they want? Enable them, or you'll lose the power. And we're going to see what I would think would be too much of a shift, because I think a partnership does need to be here. And I think that you're going to see more curriculum on this topic going forward, discussing how important it is to be a facilitator of freedom and a facilitator of innovation while maintaining some of the structures that are important for IT and data management. And with that, I thank you for your time this morning. Thank you very much.
just spoke a little bit. If you're in M4 or M7 A and P, you're going to be one level up on the 3rd floor. The rest of you classes start in 10 minutes, but the rest of them are on the lower level, 2 floors down. Thank you and enjoy the week.